Have you ever loved someone, and if you have, exactly how far would you go for them? You hear it all the time. Babe, would you still love me? If I was a worm, and that's just a fun hypothetical, but it comes from a real place. Can we be loved, and if we can, when? How? Some people get their happily ever after, and some people don't, but either way, they don't write grandiose love poems or plays about the monster. They made all of Shrek about it. For polite society, love is just as much aesthetic as emotion. No, the monster doesn't get a happily ever after. Pandora's Tower is a little weird. It looks like a fairly generic fantasy action RPG at first glance, but it's a bit more complicated than that. And a lot more disturbing. The short version is, you slay monsters, rip them to pieces, and feed them to your girlfriend. When I find which of you popped a stiff just then, you're made to climb a series of towers for the flesh of powerful beasts to cure the curse that's always in danger of transforming her into one of them. And it's a cute game, spending most of its budget on Elena here and her frictionless player self-insert boyfriend. And this can all be yours for the low, low price of fuck me. Man, what? I say this like I didn't pay this price, like this is surprising to me somehow. Pandora's Tower is one of the rarer Nintendo Wii titles. Just look at that box. Yep. Any region but the US. Well, you know, just another reason to love America. Pandora's Tower was surprisingly developed by Gambarian. Yeah, the people who made Jump Ultimate Stars and the One Piece Grand Battle series of games. Sure, that doesn't sound like much to the uninitiated, but frankly, I'd trust them with my life. Apparently, Satoru Iwata, then president of Nintendo, believed that the studio had proved themselves and deserved the chance to make something original instead of being permanently stuck in the licensed anime game development mind. It suffered from a lengthy and troubled dev cycle, but the extra time, if nothing else, ensured the final product was significant, worthwhile. Of course, that doesn't guarantee global release. Pandora's Tower was a target of Operation Rainfall, a 2011 fan initiative to bring a handful of Wii releases to the US, by demonstrating public interest for the games, the other two being The Last Story and Xenoblade Chronicles. We almost didn't get this game. Or in GameStop anyway. But then, odd and interesting games were always hampered by market interests. Why publish something overseas if people refuse to buy it, call it cringe and anime, and not engage with it meaningfully because it doesn't star a cartoon ape? Or act like a Phantom Soup kitchen. But thankfully, I can spend half a grocery run on video games. Cringingly. So let's start this thing up. We meet the story's only proper characters in the first cutscene. A young woman performs on a stage, but something goes wrong. Something we're not fully filled in about. And she escapes with the help of a young man named Aaron. And Mavda, easily the scariest person on screen at any time. Highly trustworthy behavior. She ferries them to an abandoned watchtower overlooking a chasm where several chains uphold a massive structure that seats multiple towers. This is the Scar, which is pinned together by the enormous chains upon which sit the 13 towers, ancient, monster-infested spires that hold the cure to Elena's sudden illness, allegedly. We're told she's cursed, and the glowing mark on her back proves it. She'll gradually transform into a monster unless we head to the towers for beast flesh and bring it back. It's an easy job. You wander in, find a monster, whack it enough times, and tear a chunk of meat right out of its hide. Flesh in hand, we're told that Elena has to eat this stuff to survive. She has a choice, of course, but then she'll turn into one of the things we just killed. And no, we're not going to prepare the chunk, even though there's a stove right over there. You take it raw. Now bark. I love video games because they pave over so many details. Is this infested with worms? Probably, but shut up. Will she contract an illness from eating uncooked biological tissue? Listen, pal, you're asking a lot of questions. You have to understand, this is gross on its face, but in-universe, to the dominant religion of the land Elena grew up in, eating meat is forbidden. So Elena is made to abandon a core tenet of her faith in pursuit of survival and love. And she does this for the vaguest chance of being saved, trusting a woman who looks like she's packing a few health bars under her cloak. And it's a long shot, but Aaron has a chance. He just has to hunt down the masters of each individual tower and bring back their flesh.
Well, if you don't eat it, you grow more and more monstrous. And there'll be no happy ending for you and young Aaron.
Unfortunately, you're gonna have to do all that with the Wiimote. How far are you willing to go? Would you save your girlfriend with a Wiimote? Oh, not the motion controls, no! As a one-time Wiimote hater, I think it's all a bit overdone. Sure, it's weird handling two discombobulated controllers at once, but it's not like the devs weren't aware of the issue, working around it. During development, the game went from lone Wiimote control to the current setup, with playtester resistance all the way. But it's a small hurdle to experience one of the Wii's most unique games, one that has something to say. And it's kind of perverse to reduce the thing down to a series of features and specs and all that. It diminishes the heart of the work, because broken down to its individual pieces, Pandora's Tower isn't anything special. Like any worthwhile relationship, one part should always insist on the betterness of its other half. It's an experience that benefits massively from the ways its individual systems work together, and the way the energy of play naturally ebbs and flows at different points. There would be no action without the RPG, and no RPG without the action. That is, these parts would suck on their own, but the context they lend to each other makes the experience. I should say that you can use a classic controller or the Wii U gamepad, so you don't have to bother with the default setup if you have the means, but I think it adds to the experience anyway. Pickle my pizza, baby, I'm going to hell. The game is played in two phases. You're either at home or out in the towers, chilling or killing, as one does. Time at your temporary home is spent connecting to Elena, and time in the tower is spent saving her. In a way, these are the same thing, just mechanically distinct.
Are you alright? You're not...
And apparently literally the same thing, because this girl is not okay. Allegedly, early testers hated the two phases. They were having fun in the towers, but actually disliked heading home to see Elena. I guess the prototype version struggled to make players care. So during the late stages of development, the team added as many little details and twists of the brush as possible to make Elena real. She cooks, she cleans, she has hobbies, and even work, if you give her some anyway. There isn't much to do at home except talk. The game surrenders its mechanics for a lazy role-playing vibe. This separates home and work in-game, and that's just how the developers thought of it. Quote, during development, we'd often liken it to a spouse staying at home while the partner goes out to work. If they come home late, the spouse is going to get angry, so they'll do their best to come home early. But at the same time, if they put in longer hours at the office, they'll earn more money, so there's a dilemma. That's the nature of the game. And true enough, most of your playtime is spent in the towers. You can fix up your gear at home and stare at the beautiful countryside and the gaping fucking hole in the earth. It's a little spacious, but no worries. The devs put a special "Where's Elena" button on the controller. Where's Elena? Ah, gotcha. Wait, where's Elena? Hey, I can't stop looking at my girlfriend. Speaking of the hole, okay, that can't go there. Pandora's Tower is a fully fledged fantasy setting, which you hardly experience because the focus is placed entirely on the plight of the couple. There are mountains of text found in-dungeon or at home that paint a picture of the region's kingdoms, political structures, background information on the tower, the fancy chain Mabda gave you, info on her people, the Vestra, who were forced into a nomadic way of life for an ancient catastrophe. There might be something about the skeleton dude on her back, but I couldn't find it. All I really know is he speaks in censorship. Man, chill out. The lore and regional history are a little distant, and I like that because Elena and Aaron are living in their own world in the middle of their own problems. My girlfriend is fucking wriggling, man. I ain't reading all that. For all the ambition of its lore and world building, the actual game space is pretty flat. The towers are mostly plain stone. Moss-coated walls, bolted metal sheets, little visual flares like pillars, engravings, and wood. These breathe gasping life into a place without a pulse. It was made for the Wii, and it's not always pretty. Yeah, you like crunchy pixels? The towers aren't totally soulless or anything, and yeah, maybe they should look weathered and barren. They're abandoned, occupied by monsters. I'm more surprised there's no shit on the walls. Coward bastard Nintendo at it again. Each tower has its own signature decorations and set pieces. You're never wondering, is this fireplace? Is this water place? Did I go to the wrong tower? Very Nintendo. Mario-esque, this game. Apparently, the towers are elemental and feature masculine and feminine deity statues because the devs took inspiration from wuxing, so Chinese philosophy, with the feminine and masculine deities derived from the concept of yin and yang, respectively. The play space is physically constructed to represent the couple's bond. Oh, this is fun. The North American version has a glitch in the final 2 towers of the game where re-entry fully crashes the console. You can reset or get around it in other ways, but I like the idea that Pandora's Tower would rather you just fuck off. The only real issue with the towers is, once you've run through the first set, you're more or less made to run it back through another set built from the same fundamental pieces. For example, this is Grass Place, and this is Grass Place 2. And to be clear, these desolate visuals complement the story. While different towers are more or less decorated than others with incredible keystone imagery and notable landmarks, most of your time in the towers is cold, lonely, and tense. It's only when you finally return home, either with a teleport item or more likely trekking all the way back to the entrance, that you feel a genuine sense of calm. The clock stops. You can breathe again. You aren't walking into ominous purple crystals or being ambushed by monsters. There's no mystery. You get to talk to Elena. You get to rest. Despite sleeping in a stone tower not so different from the place you hunt for flesh, simple things like beds, tables, bookshelves, and a stove lend warmth to an otherwise cold space, arranged and kept by Elena, of course. She can't do much to help you, but she can give you peace and purpose. And in case you don't care about any of that, you'll probably find yourself liking it anyway. Dungeons get increasingly intricate and you're always on a timer. While you won't game over just for letting it run out, Elena gradually transforms as the clock advances, meaning that by the time you get home, sometimes she's partially transformed, or worse. And it's heartbreaking to watch. Elena is not some incredibly charismatic person, right? The flagship character of the game, the focus of its screen time, is not all that impressive. What she is deeply sympathetic. Coming home to her twisted form, arms and legs mangled, clinging to her smile as she weakly sweeps at the floor, desperately trying to prove her worth to you, doesn't need description. It speaks for itself.
Oh no, come on!
It feels a little weird seeing someone twist into a horrible flesh abomination in a Wii game, but it's definitely Nintendo.
So long, Bowser!
Like those early testers mentioned, play is weird and fun, and talk is slow and boring, but this dynamic gives way as the game goes on. You appreciate the breaks, you're trained to think of Elena, and you don't just want a breather, you need it. These separate worlds work together. She's the context. Unlike her, Aaron isn't much of a character. He mostly grunts almost Link-like, and sometimes he gets a small sentence. He was deliberately designed as a shell for the player to inhabit, though he begs the question whether it's more worthwhile to give him a full place in the world or leave him in his current state. I think he works fine as is. You're the one controlling him and harvesting flesh. You feel the weight of the relationship as kinetically as you would if Aaron were a full person. I think the criticism that he should have been fleshed out comes from an older era of games critique looking at the role of player interaction as a somehow lesser pursuit than more traditional modes of storytelling like in films or novels, but regardless, I know that I cared about Pandora's Tower, and that's about as sterling a recommendation as they come, even if I had to get over the hump. You know, the 1-inch high barrier of having to learn. Pandora's Tower is played with both the Wiimote and Nunchuck, and while that might make some other kind of gamer post about how it really deserves a remake, fucking you deserve a remake. I think it manages to add to the experience. It's not a ball grinder, okay? Game's a little frustrating sometimes, but most of that boils down to user error. I listened to a review that said platforming with the chain, like swinging from place to place, was needlessly frustrating. Which just isn't true. First of all, it's rare, and when it's a little annoying, it's because you need to let go a beat after you finish. If this were the original Devil May Cry, they'd make you start over for that. It's not all that hard to get a grip on, movement is pretty tight, and the game was deliberately designed down for people who aren't great at action games and just wanted romance. I checked. That said, combat is a pretty big chunk of the run, and it can suck if you don't know what you're doing. The aforementioned review also said the chain was stronger than anything you can do in Melee, which is also just wrong. You've got 2 major tools, the chain and your sword. Well, you start with a sword, but you're quickly able to swap to dual blades, a scythe, and even a spring-loaded stake in New Game Plus. Pretty weird to see a mecha reference in-game, but I guess that's what New Game Plus is for. You only have enough room in your pack to use one weapon at a time, so really, it's a choice between fast, medium, or slow. Your melee attacks can feel weak and unwieldy at first. They have pretty stiff frame data that keeps you locked in the direction you initially attacked in, and basic attacks, like just tapping the button, are terrible. mosquito bites against lurching, lumbering flesh golems. In a slightly slippery game like Pandora's Tower, you end up feeling like a flailing idiot. However, you're actually meant to charge up your attacks. Doing so grants invincibility frames and big hitboxes, and even better, depending on your weapon's level, you can charge further attacks while unleashing a charged attack, leading to charge attack combos that can be slightly challenging to get a handle on until you realize you're just couching a charge within another attack. If you master that, you win any normal combat. You become almost untouchable, especially with the scythe, and more or less clobber any living thing into a bloody pulp. So yeah, that's why some people have trouble with melee, because they didn't play it. The chain is the other side of combat. Some monsters need a good lashing, tearing off their helmet or clipping their wings. You'd think shooting for little pinpoints in battle would be annoying, but the game generously slows time down when you hold to aim. While it's the optimal way to handle certain monsters, flyers and things unaffected by your main weapon, it takes a back seat during regular play because it takes more time to use. You know, if 3 rampaging, blood-hungry hell beasts are tromping all over the screen, you don't really have time to chain one up and tug on it till death. That's what iframes are for. The chain is still critical to regular play. You need it to pull items out of monster corpses like flesh and other, and you don't have to use it for damage. You can click an enemy with the Wiimote to zap the chain onto it, and either click again to fully stun that monster, or click on another to tether them, or leash an already chained monster to a pole. All told, there aren't enough interesting use cases to make the chain a combat all-star. It won't open up a world of new creative angles for play. You can just as easily flatten anything with charged attacks, like beating a frog to death with a fly swatter. I actually missed one major chain mechanic until partway through play. You build a tension meter by pulling on enemies, which you can cash in for major damage with a wrist flick relative to the released tension. Damn. They put edging in the game. The tension meter makes the chain almost competitive with charged melee strikes, but again, you're made to stand mostly still in combat to pull it off, so it's only really viable on less mobile enemies, and preferably one-on-one, which is why it shines against the bosses.
Oh, that damage! What?
There's a deeper, nerdier action game lying under the surface that probably never manifested because of the Wiimote limitations, so relative imprecision compared to buttons, and target demographics hampered the framework's potential. It wasn't the hard focus. It's easy to imagine a Pandora's Tower where the chain interacts with the environment and enemies more thoroughly, where tethered enemies could trip anyone they ran into, or where you could leash monsters to the environment more consistently. In a way, charge attacks are the cement that fills in the void of the system's potential. But I guess they needed to make Aaron good at something that's uniquely his own. Apparently the towers are loaded with little secrets, like items that can only be found by aiming over them or having a special accessory. Hey, it says here that I can go back to old towers at different times to hunt for rare items and materials. Like, I'm kinda on a schedule here. I should mention the chains. Pandora's Tower is pretty freeform when it comes to engaging with the tower. While a few have fairly linear paths, those open up more as they become more ambitious, later in the game that is, and it's possible to stumble onto the boss room and find it locked. They're bolted by chains that snake through any given tower, some of which are genuinely obnoxious to track down, hidden in unexpected ways or demanding absolute attention. You get real intimate with the interiors of these things. It's a simple game, but it's easy to get overwhelmed. And I love that because it encourages the downtime, and therefore rest. It's not always played at a smooth clip. As an RPG, Pandora's Tower has levels and stats and an economy, which elevate a kind of flaccid system into something greater. The towers are incredibly good at approximating danger without making the experience hair-pulling. Healing fountains exist, but only dole out a number of partially healing sips. Potions are costly and bite into your budget. Your equipment breaks after a single monster hit sometimes, not even from strong enemies. You're incentivized to become a combat master, in this case rolling good and abusing iframes, to avoid paying for repairs, because they're expensive and wasteful and really easy to incur if you're screwing around. Aaron has to be perfect to not be a burden himself. Man. While Aaron, the character, is never really questioned for your play, how you choose to use him can have consequences for the relationship. It can be the difference between buying a wedding ring late game or having to wait for New Game Plus. It can be the difference between buying better armor or not and struggling in the towers, putting more on Elena's plate by making her worry. No matter what happens, the subconscious dynamics of the relationship are blared headlight bright into your brain. Video game enthusiasts have never been overly enthusiastic about time limits and rough economies. How many children never bothered to be Pikmin 1 because being timed was scary? And no player really enjoys being punished for taking a stray hit in combat. Oops, someone sideswiped my car and now I'm out $500. But it's okay, this is really enriching my character. But these limits exist to make the systems real. It's not an action RPG where grinding away is going to be efficient. There's too much innate risk unless you're already good enough to not need quality armor. And you can't rely on only having big number because time is a factor. It diminishes the weightlessness incurred by some RPGs, makes its play felt through rules and limits. Pandora's Tower is a play-first title, or at least the devs think so, but that doesn't necessarily diminish its worth. It mostly forgoes long-winded cutscenes and excessive dialogue for a focused experience. Though it's worth noting that of the 3 Operation Rainfall titles, Pandora's Tower was often considered the weakest in terms of story. It's not a surprising take. Xenoblade Chronicles is famous for being, peak Kinocore, it says here on my sheet, and the last story has story in the title. There's no way it's got the worst story. That had to be at least most of the focus. And on its face, Pandora's Tower is whelming. This whelms me. A woman falls ill and you try your best to save her before it's too late. It could be more cliched, but not by much. I just happen to think this kind of framing is useless. It doesn't matter which game is the most Kino or has the best character writing or whatever. This is a video game and we aren't power scaling plots. The real question is, what does Pandora's Tower want to say and how does it use its unique tools, its medium, to say it? Consider the Oraklos chain. This, I hesitate to say hookshot, is a sacred artifact of Mavda's people, the Vestra. Allegedly, it can control fate to some degree, but it's easy to wave that off as yokelly spiritualism. However, while Eren relies on his sword to skewer his enemies, the thing he's good at, being an experienced soldier, he has to make use of the chain for navigation purposes and to wrangle the masters. His quest is functionally impossible without this chain, which has multiple implications. Given that this fate-bound chain is a form of transportation, it's implied that Eren is guided towards his fate by the chain. It characterizes every swing and climb, no matter how fiddly or challenging, as something you're drawn to do, something you're guided through, in a sense. It's a relic of an exiled people, and you're just a small-time soldier from one of the nearby warring nations. You need older ancestral knowledge and power to save your love, navigate the towers, and maybe do good for the world. And the chain is empowered, or at least representationally empowered, by deepening your bond with Elena. Using the chain is, in a sense, using Elena, or the strength of your love, as a tool to navigate the tower's trials. It's Elena who gives you the power to win. So while you might sigh and moan and harumph about using the annoying pointer to kill bosses, narratively you're harnessing the power of another ethnic group and your bond with another person. And they actually managed to build a little imprecision, trying to wrangle the censor bar, into regular play to illustrate that negotiation. The chain may symbolize the couple's bond, but it also signifies Eren's commitment, his obligations. Well, I guess it's better than a physical ball and chain. Like, this very easily could have turned into, "Oh, Mao, I hate my wife." There isn't a whole heaping story to unpack. For the most part, it's only the characters who advance as you finish the towers. Nobody kidnaps Elena or breaks into the watchtower. Eren doesn't slowly lose control of himself, and Mavda's little fella stays put. The benefit of such a bare-bones game is the absolute focus placed on the things that remain. If you clutter a table, the centerpiece probably won't stand out in any meaningful way. There's no composition or craft or form. A cluttered table might be aesthetically interesting in other ways, maybe telling another kind of story altogether, but it would be just as easy to glaze over and ignore the detail. Pandora's Tower tackles love, absolutely, though I guess it hits a little harder if you've been there. Eren and Elena's love is the game's centerpiece. While you're away in the tower, you're only thinking about one thing: the clock counting down Elena's eventual fall to the curse. It doesn't tick fast, but it only ever stops at home. You're surrounded by cold walls and stripped of human connection. Monsters often lack recognizable human features, eyes, noses, etc. The only person Eren thinks about is Elena. And that little character note is made palpable in the game world, communicated through its unflinching austerity and minimalism. Even Mavda appears more monster than human. Eren really only has eyes for one person, and it's amplified by the aesthetics. Damn, jealous lovers would love this game. Like, what if everyone else were ugly or gone. While you're always hoping to clear a tower in one run, sometimes you can't. You get stuck and overwhelmed, and sand runs thin in the glass, so you've got to go back. You quickly hunt down some flesh, anything at all, but preferably something quality, so you can fully reset the clock on your return. Bigger monsters drop better flesh. You have to put yourself in greater danger for greater reprieve. Work harder to offset the game's hard limits, so the clock. You're finally free to relax once you're home. Elena is peace and healing. What she means to him, once again, manifests in the mechanics, but it's deeper than a short break. You're free to talk to her, and she responds with voiced dialogue through most of the game.
It's simply wonderful.
With only one character as the game's focus, Elena becomes a rich and well-rounded person. It helps that her figurehead status frees up the dev's voice work budget. Regardless, the way Aaron sees her is, again, communicated through negative space. Nobody else gets this much dialogue. Nobody else is on the same pedestal. It's elevation through subtraction. Mavda is always nearby, but you have to invite her in. And she leaves once you're done business. Your space is always preserved. Your relationship is always the focus. Mavda is necessary for selling consumables, upgrading your weapons, fixing broken items, crafting the odd material, providing cash flow for the purchase of information, lore documents found in the towers, that is, and for worldly perspective. She has a lot to add in conversation, helping to fill out the world better, but only if you actually ask for it. Aaron's single-minded conviction to save Elena is the default. You have to consent to most additional information. But this applies to your partner as well. You have a little bar on the left that represents the depth of your connection to Elena. You fill this bar in a number of ways. Talking to her throughout the game gives a constant trickle, and that means giving her the time, often through multiple prompts to let her finish. You have to be a good listener to deepen your bond. Can you do it? Will you let your partner yap? Elena expresses frustration over her helplessness. She can't hunt beasts or cure herself, so she's stuck at home, relegated to the role of homemaker and resigned to trusting Aaron completely. She decorates and cleans the watchtower, cooks even though she's terrible, an extremely tired trope that isn't actually played for laughs here, handles the laundry, and actually manages to translate texts you find in the towers, which can be sold off to Mavda. It's one of the main ways she contributes over the course of the game, effectively providing your biggest source of income, and it's something the pair handle together. One gathers notes, the other makes them saleable. This small detail is absolutely critical because the game presumably doesn't want to stumble into an embarrassing damsel in distress story where an entirely helpless or non-autonomous woman waits for someone to save her. She contributes in tangible, uniquely dignified ways, even if they aren't going to cure the curse directly. Still, the main way you build a relationship with Elena is gifts. You find gift items in the tower or buy them from Mavda. A lot of the bigger ones end up as decor or decoration for your temporary residence and Elena, respectively. This lamp is warm. Uh-huh. I like lamp. Yeah, you can give her almost anything you find. And she even has individual comments for a few of them. I was so excited when I handed her berries and she wanted to bake them into something for Aaron, but there's only a handful of examples like this in the game. She's not a garbage disposal unit, even if she eats like a fucking monster. She'll actually wear clothing you hand her, or at least until her transformation shreds the fabric and forces you to repair it. She even has unique dialogue for giving her mended gifts.
Would you like some bodily fluid? Oh, she didn't like that.
Supposed to do with this?
How could I have known?
With so few characters, Elena snatches up most of the screen time, giving the devs the chance to flesh her out in frame, sparkling when you hand her a ring, twirling in new clothes. It's endearing, and it's something you have to choose. Depending on the ending you want, it's actually more beneficial to sink your amassed wealth into presents instead of equipment or healing items. You can put your own needs aside during the main game to lift her spirits, to no apparent mechanical gain, and that isn't nothing. A more cynical person would say, aha, a toxic relationship dynamic. Aaron has to martyr himself for the relationship to turn out well. But that isn't true. You're never told explicitly about the affinity meter's relationship to the endings, even if you can suss it out on your own. But either way, it's almost functionally impossible, if not legitimately impossible, for a player to fully max the gauge on a first run of the game. Almost halfway through a run, you'll see how hard it is to fill up. You realize it's obviously not going to happen. So what happens instead? The The player is forced to weigh their options, invest in what they need, and factor Elena into the budget accordingly. You want a new upgrade, but you need an expensive material, so you buy that rare component and craft the thing. And you're pretty sure you need a health potion, so you're left with only enough for something on the side. Either way, you're always thinking about Elena, throughout the towers and in every expenditure. You do what you can, however you can, to make things work. Which is raw and real, unless you're rich. In either case, the way you treat her in-game has a direct impact on the story. You can roleplay your actions however you like. Aaron was disgusted by her curse and could barely stand to be home, battling through hordes of monsters to forget the reality of his relationship. Or Aaron loved her but didn't know how to express it and could only fight to save her life, abandoning all pretenses of tenderness in the process. These are two different interpretations on what it means to ignore Elena, ignore gifts, don't talk to her. However you read those actions, they still lead to the same kind of neglect that seals her fate, and all represented through mechanics. And this is because Elena is her own person, needs support in a way that she recognizes. You have to speak her love language, as it were. Regardless of how you think you should treat her, she's interested in quality time, gifts, or at least reminders of her humanity to thrive in this situation. Pandora's Tower expresses the reality of love and relationships with brisk air plainness for something so fixated on a petite girl munching on juice-dripping flesh balls. Love isn't about what you think another person needs, trying to fix them, trying to change them or mold them into a better version of themselves, or the version you made up in your head. That can happen, but real change comes from within and isn't compelled or imposed. Even if someone fundamentally alters your worldview, it's still on you to go through the motions, carry out the change. Actions speak louder than words, and the love has got to come from you. And the game doesn't comment on that dynamic explicitly. Instead, it has rules and limits, mechanics that codify their situation to determine how the couple's story plays out. If you want to save Elena, really seriously save her, you're going to have to commit. You're going to have to acknowledge her humanity even when she's on the verge of turning. You're going to have to pick up that shredded dress or broken bangle and put them back together, even if it costs you. You need to talk to her, to make her voice relevant even when you're stressed out of your mind, because she is too. And she wants to help and she wants to connect. So you have to be the bridge. She's the one who's suffering and incapable of curing herself, but you can be the rock. You can strike out and bring back what you both need to pull through. You need her too, right? That's why you're doing any of this. Saving Elena means killing the bosses and feeding her their flesh. There's a boss for every level and no real reason to break down each one. They might have gimmicks, but those gimmicks boil down to using your limited tools. They're deliberately designed to look like warped, inhuman, even abstract entities. They're actually something like the 12 Colossi. None of them are immediately hostile, and there's a lingering sense that you're doing something wrong. The game's called Pandora's Tower. It's presumably going deeper is bad. They're all hulking, plated creatures, and several of them are armed with actual weapons, like laser cannons and things. And despite their armor, they're mostly soft flesh beneath, and so they're perverse and unsettling, but because of their unique quirks and animations, come off as sympathetic in some way. It's later revealed that they were once people, experimented on to mold humans into superweapons and end the constant wars plaguing the region. It may be a function of the game's overall minimalism, I'm not sure, but the bosses shine so much brighter because of it, still clinging to their individuality after being reduced to weapons. Whether or not they're actually deserving of death, Aaron has no choice but to see them as monsters and purely to save Elena. Eating their flesh is apparently the only way to lift the curse, so they're enemies by circumstance. I appreciate the ways the bosses are fairly straightforward but reasonably challenging. It's not uncommon to have to work out the exact strategy to land a kill and die twice in the process, which will only set you back to the boss's door. Where melee weapons carve through regular monsters and even get a few worthwhile uses in these battles, the bosses demand the chain. You need it to physically tear out your pound of flesh. You need it to reveal their weak points or haul them into a more favorable position. You need it to hurl their own parts back at them to crack their shells, etc. The chain gets used in a lot of interesting ways, and because of the chain's innate implications, like what it signifies, Aaron isn't only relying on his power, but the Vestra represented by Mavda and Elena in these battles. And that's striking. You know, many is the married man who works long hours and comes home all, "No one respects what I do for this family," forgetting that what he does for this family is itself a function of circumstance. Most people don't push, really explore their potential without something, someone to fight for. So I think the chain is more important than it looks. Eating Master Flesh has a strange side effect. After every piece, Elena has a vision of a family not unlike her and Aaron, but with a sick little boy, all struggling through hard times. This side story unfolds throughout the game and eventually reaches its climax when you realize that it's directly tied to the tower's origins. It's what tips you off that the Masters were once human and, out of desperation, underwent military experiments to survive. Eventually, we learn that the curse is a result of Aaron's blood connection to this ancient family, which carries the implication, maybe you're the monster. Even if you don't know it, or read through the lens of a relationship, maybe your actions do need scrutinizing, regardless of how worthy you are otherwise, how much you work, etc. Maybe you're carrying a long-held or upbringing-inspired piece of yourself into a relationship that's more harmful than it's worth. As you feed her progressively more meat, Elena's hunger only increases. We watch her transform from refusing meat outright to ravenously consuming it, even losing control of herself to get more. Even attacking Aaron. The flesh isn't working. Pandora's Tower has 5 endings, 6 if you don't count the true game over, or letting Elena lose her humanity completely.
This would never have happened.
Bleak. The other endings are earned by finishing the towers with different levels of affinity with Elena, so if you never gift her anything or barely talk to her, it's possible to get the lower grade endings, but if you're actually playing the thing, if you're invested in the fiction, it's easy enough to scrape out the A or B ending on a first pass. But the developers were kind and didn't want to leave invested players on a sour note, so they made it easy to start from various different points in New Game Plus. For a lot of people, it only really takes buying out Mavda's stock, giving out these items, and completing the final dungeon again to secure that happy ending. What's worth noting about the various endings is how the chain factors in. Early in the game, you learn that the chain has the power to
control the chains of destiny.
From Mavda. Various documents in games support its nature as a fate-changing artifact, and true to form, not only does the ultimate fate of the couple change depending on your affinity with Elena, but also changes how the curse is broken. The other endings are effectively ranked from worst to best. So, Ending D cuts the game off early, after the 9th tower. It's hard to get this ending because if you're engaging at all, you'll sail well above this threshold. And it's fascinating because if you're not taking things seriously, if you don't respect the fiction or the relationship on screen, the game cuts itself off early, unceremoniously pulls the plug on your playtime. You're made to kill the transformed Elena, and for nothing. The curse continues and your story fades from memory, without beating all the towers. This ending makes it explicit that feeding Elena the Master Flesh isn't enough to lift the curse. Of course, Mavda hinted as much at the beginning, but only barely. So in case a player only bothers with the action half and never connects to the reason Aaron's doing any of these things, the devs had the balls to eject them outright. All the other endings get you to the end of the game, at least. Elena always eats the final Master Flesh, always transforms anyway, and you always have to confront her. Ending C is also a little challenging to get, unless the player struggled with gifts, and by that I mean money, and didn't connect enough. Mavda picks up on this. She betrays you to the Illyrian army and suggests turning Elena into a living weapon to unite the warring nations of the game's setting, using Aaron as insurance to keep the partially human Elena in check. I don't know if I like an ending where a representative of an exiled race cozies up to Empire. The couple lives, their love is still intact, but the curse isn't broken. Elena loses her humanity and you're made into indentured servants for the military. It's a depressing conclusion, but that's what you earn for only half engaging. You know, your actions said it all. Ending B plays out a little differently. You fight the transformed Elena atop the central tower, but she realizes that even if you can beat her, the entity that took control, Zarin, is still inside. She ends up hurling herself off the tower and into the scar as Mavda closes it with the Oraklos chain. This solves the problem with the curse. Nobody else will suffer like she did, but Aaron's left distraught. Maybe she could have been saved. Ending A plays out like Ending B, but Zarin explains a little more about the game's backstory. More or less the same info you learned from Elena's visions. The curse remains, and the only thing that matters now is love. They have no future, so they throw themselves into the scar and close it with the chain. The endings D to A don't solve the curse or the couple's problems. The world is still plagued by war, and if not, it's because Elena's power united those fractured nations under a single, terrifying banner. It's a dark game, but I appreciate its ability to be genuine. Love is maybe the ultimate motivator, the prime context for any human life. Not necessarily romantic love, but love regardless. It would have been easier to make a game that gave the couple their happy ending, a gooier piece. A less genuine piece would have made a point of it. Stephen Sondheim didn't want to end his musical company on a overtly happy note, afraid it would make the musical a pandering piece of work, only capable of saying, marriage is great, which is why he eventually left it on Being Alive, a song that acknowledges the pain inherent to human connection. Ending S demands a maxed out affinity bar, something I could only reach by beating the game once, getting all of Mavda's stock, which only fully unlocked after rolling credits, and going through the final segment. You get a key for access to a series of doors in the towers, and multiple gifts unlock as well. You're bent to run it again. Things were never going to work out in the default state of the world in that version of history. I had to make the choice to head back and fight for a different future, with no real promise of anything better. No one is entitled to a happy ending. The world does not care. It takes effort, intentionality, faith, and not necessarily the religious kind, belief in something better to lay the foundation for something better. Ending S starts the same as the previous two. You clash at the tower's pinnacle, except this time, somehow, you purify the curse, erase the mark outright. This time, though, you're chased from the tower's apex by a freakishly mutated Zarin. It almost kills Elena, but you save her with the chain, with the symbol of your bond, by the way, and Mavda ultimately channels the power infused in the chain, fostered by your bond, to destroy the towers, sacrificing herself to end the curse. You even manage to bring peace to the war-torn land thanks to the Scar's closure, and Mavda's people, the Vestra, are given a new land to settle in. Of course, you also live happily ever after. It's the kind of ending that sticks to your teeth, so sweet it's absurd, and almost disingenuous, pure wish fulfillment, but that's what I like about it. You have to work for this version of events, make the choice to go back and do things right. The way so many people wonder what might have been and how things could have turned out better, you need to re-examine to get it. Love ain't easy. No level count or armor rating will carry you, and the game responds to your effort by rewarding you instead of doling out another monkey's paw conclusion. Maybe things could work out if only you got everything right. It's a happy ending that manages to shine light on its own absurdity. Maybe you could end all war and solve all problems with love. Maybe. Probably not. But you'll never know if you don't try, anyway. And I think that's a lot more useful than telling the viewer to gaze soberly at the woes of humankind and act like misery is meaning. What Pandora's Tower really asks is simple. How far are you willing to go? You feel love or want love or both, but how far are you really willing to go? Can you allow your ego to drown in another person? Are you willing to see another person? I mean, really see them. Hopes, aspirations, and dreams. And are you willing to fight for them? Even if it's hard. Because Pandora's Tower doesn't give you a perfect damsel. Elena tries to keep her composure throughout the game, but she's miserable, unthreading at the seams in every other scene. Maybe unintentionally, it's one of the strongest representations of love and mental illness I've come across in gaming. Because she hides it whenever she can, and Aaron does his best to let her keep her dignity, not react, but he lets on more than he wants to, at least to the viewer. There's a sense that the towers, where you play, is somehow more manageable, preferable to watching Elena suffer. In this way, play becomes escape. Pandora's Tower is willing to show Elena at her absolute worst, her most scared, and pathetic, and ugly. And it asks you to love her regardless. It doesn't hand you some perfectly attractive and submissive and fetishy thing that only people who cannot know what love means demand. It promises you to a person and asks you to acknowledge her. Do you have the courage to look at someone on their worst day, warped beyond recognition, and see the best in them anyway? Decide they're worth it? Pull them back from the brink? Will you reach out and stand firm through those changing tides? Or will you break? Pandora's Tower doesn't ask you to be a martyr, only for you to give exactly what you can, your time and your ability. It doesn't ask Elena to consume Aaron when it very easily could have. So, how far are you willing to go? Will you choose to build up or build out? Trade your little fortress stones for planks and leave your only safe space? Will you reach out, even when it hurts? Will you let kind words cut and harsh ones kill? Can you make yourself vulnerable to all that? God or Shakespeare or whoever isn't writing you a star-crossed fiction. You're dating the monster. Nobody cares about your story with its warts and scars. So much of the world makes love an aesthetic, and ugly ain't it. The wider world will feast on your failure because it feasts on what it expects to fail, on fate. It's on you to ink your beauty into the world and tell the story you believe in together, to make your promises and keep them. Unless they're just words. Hey, thanks for making it to the end. Here's my $4 patrons. Let me blow your ears out. Adam Welsh, Air Pirate Sid, AK, Acropolon, Alpha 42, Emperor Sandy, Angel Rivera, Angus, Anthony, Aria, Aaron, Ashley, my wife, my darling. I asked KBash to make you smile. Also, hi, Merrick. Azriel, Azura, Atticure, Owleye, Axinate, Bear Skeleton, Basement Dweller, Bosch 7, Basil, Be Gay, Do Crimes, Bella, more like Smell Ben M, Big Guile, Big Damn Gamer, Big Papa Spray, Biodigital Jazzman, Bite of Cursed Sushi, Blake Against the Machine, Largle Hargle, Blossom Dante, Boom Dead, BH Operator, Orgor, Born in Shadow, Brandon S, Brendan Hesse, British Goose, Brian McKnight, Cal, Cajun Lady, Cakesar, C-Dub, Casual Male XL, Caesar T, Shiro Hero, Chloric Fox, Cordant, Chris Bromo, Cody Golden, Comfy Moogle, Kami Hog, Couch MOBA, Cosmetic, Crabmonger, Fish Finagler, Trashkers, Crater, Crispy J, Chrono 19D, Cup of the Papa, CW Glassworks, Cyborg Jiro, Danky Steak, Swacky Bay, David Castillo, Dara, Dash Granny, Deadward, Destrega, Defor. Did you know if you put a wooden spoon on your pot while it's boiling, the pot spoon water will spill the water pot, the boiling pot water steam spoon wood? Dingus back. Don't read this out loud. Oh no, he did it! Doodle Flu, Doug Prince, DJ Professor K, Dr. House from the critically acclaimed television show House MD, Dr. Cullen PhD, Drop the Bait, Duffman, The Protagonist, Dylan Winston, Eclair, El Jaguar, Electric Song, Elephal, Elpio, Emperor Pickle, Empty Tenchi, Eric Monticello, Erica Black, Excalibur Shine, Exorian Hagen, Thnar, Farrakhan's just happy to be Burns here, Maximum, Fazillion, Forte Noir, Frog Vorbis, Frosty Gamer, Gandalf the Garen, Guaranteed, Gigglebite, Bliff Seeker, Gobo Bobo, Gobsmack, Goose 6112, Gregar 700, Gray, The Darkest Black, Dark Horde, Gucci Plant, Hatsune Miku's Crack House, Archive, Heeman, Gaiman Station, Helen Dingo, Hermit J, Hebe, Honeymutt, Horn Tiger, Horse Boots. How do you know? I just took 7 grams of magic mushrooms and now I'm lost in the woods. Imagination Act. I'm supporting KBash just because I wanted to make this part of the video longer. Inferno galore. IOBG. I punched a sandwich. It's not bad. It's time to sue. It's not good. Ivy, Ruth Langley, Jack Hydrick, Jacob, Jalopy, James, Jams, Jank Dankins, Jason Lasky, Jaden, James Vaughn, Jar of Screaming Eyes, Jay Drito, JL Savaras, Jay Deus, JB, JJ09, JK Hedgehog, John Bo the Joker, Jordan Joyner, Shorzy Burden, Juicy Frost, July, Lunar Butterfly, June, Kadoki, K-Chan, Keegan Too Cool, Keith the Thief, Key the Iron Idol, Kata Snack, King Kuma, Key, Kanite Pike, Karasek, Kitty Caddis, Clock, Tanoe, Cone 2020, Clayton, Crazy Dark Chocolate, Crumperton, Kyle, not that Kyle, KZ Excellent, Lady Weeb, Laundry Mom, Lego Sid, Lethal Nibbles, Linkle, Little Big Trouble, Loathsome Dung Eater, Lion Shard, Blonde, Low Red, Low Fat Mogert, Lucas Boy, Blood Mac James, Lunatic, Magic Meows, Malamatic Wolf, Manapool, Manic Pixie Space Pirate, Man in Space, Mal Fever, Mara Ganger, Marcules, Marcus Rambles, Max Muller, Maxwell B, Maximum Dawn, Meaty Smacks, Mechanized Memories, Maple Puppet, Mega Boy E Nasty, Melitan, Mary Bite, Messiah of Rodents, Metal Gear Gashes, Michelle Citrano, Migsy, Mike Deviar, Minadams, Mithras, Moa, Mommy Dummy, Big Titty Goth GF Queen, Monochrome Rainbow, Morgana Black, Murray, Morn, Morte, Modi, Mr. Mango, Mr. PP Pupakaka, Mr. Edie Dab Face McYoink Bomb, Myrna, Naira Nito Torpedo, Neon Dwarf, Nick Krishna, Nick LaRosa, Nifty Rex, Not Nobel. Hell, I forgot to think of something funny for the KBash credits. Next month for sure. Okami, OJ McMuffins, Burgle Man Cranberry, Omni Nerd Zero, 137, Only LK, Kaplant, Oscar, Owlbear Breakfast, Paper Lancy, PBK, Pandemic Cowboy, Pelagic Undulation, PK Gaming, P-Mike, Popular Hitman, Prismatic Dan, Pringle, probably not great, Project Dark Punch Fighter Champion, Honosaurus Rex, Fraser McDougal, Quillworth, Raging Ataraxia, Real Beans, Red Death, Reggie Rodriguez, Renteca Bond, Ringed Relay, Rollets Bowtie, Rolando, RP Gamer, Ryan Machel, Saigon Man, Siren Smells Good, Salmon Coder, Salsa, Salty Smasher, Gabrius, Scribe Slendy, Sakaya No Order, Sensual Coder, Saphirium, Sexy Bionicle GF, Sergeant Shitbrick, Shod, Shintendo, Shut Up Wesley, Singe, Simp,
Sir Doodles a lot. Seriously tired of waiting in line. Sir Giggles XD. Sir Speedster. Skywardly. Sleepy Wabbit. Slippy Sloppy Bippy Boppy. Snart. Small Turtle House. So Zeta Dad. Sock'em Boppers. Space Lizard. Sparks. Spider Dad. Squidget. Star Night Sky.
Static Linkage.
Streffin Battles.
Sully.
Super Dingus. Super Sandwich Guy. Toxin. Jorn Chubbington. Terrence Swift. The artist formerly known as Sam the Sam. The Big Bubby. The Brandorian. The Clown Prince of Cringe. The Good Lord has blessed me. Hallelujah. The Green Loki. The Crispy Boy. The Peacemaker Pyro. The Salt Knight. The Nomad. The Toasted One. Thick Dick Mystic. Thresh. Drips Hartrop. Tiggles McGuffin. Tim Lobster. Timid the Writer. Total Play. Travis Edwards. Twiddle Chungus. Ty Guy 9001.
Udit Singh.
Unlawful Skies crippling gotcha addiction. Vid. Vacant Plaza. Valenrisk. Venom.
Verum Leonhardt.
Vice Pup. Viewers Like You. Vic. Volkento. Joaquin Get Right in My Bag. Waposa. Wayne is Boss. Weeb Trash. Who else? Shit. Wayland. Where am I? Help? Whiskey Dono. Luigi. Wrenchin. Zanny Tanner. Giandi. Shravius. Yaro 12. Yashichi. Zane the Impure. Zane the Pure. Zephigamon. Full Burner. Zero Maru 2. Zero Zalazar. Cyberbunk. If you'd like to help support the show, help me keep investing, making interesting looks at the medium, hit me up on Patreon. See you soon. KBash out.